Hey guys, welcome back to episode 2 of my SCX10-II video series. Now, this week what we're going to cover is electronics and what I chose to install in this truck. Now, as we covered in the last video, I'm starting with the Axial SCX10-II kit. This started as the 2000 Jeep Cherokee kit build, and I decided to swap on the new Proline SR5 Hilux body instead of that Jeep body. So underneath of the body, we've got the electronics that I decided to install. Now, I didn't go through the actual installation of everything that I did in this truck. Instead, I decided to get those things pre-installed and then do a little bit of discussing about them. Also, something to note before I get into the electronics that I chose. After we cover these electronics, I'll go over some other options that you can look for if you have a different budget than what I chose here. I'll also try and group those into different price ranges in the description below with some links that you guys can go and follow depending on where your budget falls for your electronics in your car. I'll do motors, ESCs, and some servo options to try and give you guys a breakdown. First, for a quick overview of the parts that I selected. I chose the Holmes Hobbies 3500 kV Polar Pro motor to put in here. That's the 540 length. To push that motor, I also, from Holmes Hobbies, chose the Trailmaster Pro BLE. For the steering, I've got a ProTech servo in there right now. This is the 370 TBL. It's not out yet. I was just running it to do a little bit of testing with it. I'm not sure when they're going to release it, and right now it's just a test servo. Normally I do like to run my Futaba servos. My Futaba servo of choice right now would be the Futaba S9177 SV. A really, really nice servo with lots of power and great speed. This one has really good power as well. Speed is a little bit less than that Futaba that I would normally run. Now, to control all of that, inside of the receiver box, I've got a Futaba 2106GF receiver. Now, that receiver is an FHSS system. Now, I can run that with either my Futaba 4PLS or my Futaba 4PX. Right now, I've got my 4PX bound up to it because that's what was closer, and I wanted to just get things dialed in. Inside there also is my Castle Creations 10 amp BEC. With a high power servo, you need to run a BEC. Even with any servo over 300 ounce inches, and especially if you're running 3S Lipo, a Castle BEC should be at the top of your list for one of the things to add to your electronics install. One other thing to mention is that on both the Holmes Hobbies ESC and that Castle BEC, I took and I shortened those extensions way down. Now, I cut them off just right at the end, and then I actually repinned them with the MPI pin set. I bought the crimpers, the pins, and the ends for those. It's something that's nice to have in your pit box. It's just something that you can do to clean up your wiring rather than having to find a place to curl up all of that extra wire that would have had to get tucked inside that receiver box if I wouldn't have shortened it. By just spending another 20 minutes or so is all it took to get those wires shortened down to just the bare minimum length. Really helped clean up my wiring altogether. For that Castle BEC, rather than attach the power leads all the way up at the Dean's plug and then run them all the way down, I simply stripped back a little bit of the power lead to the ESC itself down closer to the ESC and soldered them on there, ran the power wires back close to the base of that ESC and ran them inside of that receiver box. Helps clean it up a lot more, and you don't have to worry about any of those extra wires going with your battery connections. Now, for that motor choice, again, I did pick the Holmes Hobbies 3500 kV Polar Pro in the 540 length. It's a lot of motor. Now, so far, these trucks seem to be handling motor like that without too much problem. As far as the speed goes, I've ran this 3500 kV motor before in the SCX10-II, and I found the speed to be pretty good. Not way too fast like I was slightly concerned that it would be, but I felt that it was a great amount of speed, and I love the power that this motor puts out. As far as gearing goes, I've got the stock spur gear on there, and then I went with just a 12-tooth pinion. So I went nice and conservative on that pinion. Tons of room to go up there if I ever wanted more speed. But for now, I think that nice low 12-tooth is going to run really well with this setup. This servo that I'm running in here is over 600 ounce inches of power. That's a ton of power and way more than a 1.9 really needs. But I do like to run at least 400 ounce-inches of power in my 1.9s. I just find that that's the kind of power that I'm looking for anymore. Now, the Futabas that I normally run are in the mid 500 range, and I really have liked that power. As far as budget options go, this setup is pretty far from a budget option, I will admit that. Now, if you want to go brushless, I really suggest going with a nice brushless system. Don't skimp if you're going to go brushless, because with brushless motors, if you go and try and save money with what you're going to choose, you're going to end up with something that's going to spoil what the benefits of the brushless system really should be. So I will say that if you're going to go brushless, get a nice 4-pole sensored system. Don't go sensorless with a trail truck crawler type rig. Sensorless is not the place in this type of rig. So again, if you're going to go brushless, get the proper equipment. But if you do want to spend less money, there's a ton of brushed options that you can do. And brushed options have some upsides over even brushless systems like I've got in here. For one, the low-end control that you get from a brushed motor is what every brushless sensored system strives to be. Brushed motors have the best low-end control you can get. I have chosen to run brushless in mine because I can get very close to that anymore, and I get less maintenance and higher speeds and more power. With all of those other benefits, that is worth it to me to miss just that very, very small amount of low-end control that a brushed system gives you. Now, if I was going to choose a brushed system for this, Holmes Hobbies has the BRXL system that you could go. The ESC looks very much like this, or there's plenty of other options. The Tekin FXR was always one of my favorites when I was doing brushed crawling mainly. It's very small, super easy to program on the trail if you want to make any changes. Also, Castle has the Sidewinder SV3, I believe they're on right now, which can be had is water. You can get it waterproof, or almost all of them are waterproof right out of the box. Very easy programming via the Castle link, which the Holmes is also compatible with. The Tekin, you need a hot wire system if you want to program it on the PC. As far as motor choices themselves go, a 27-turn motor would be about as fast as I would suggest for a brushed motor in any type of trail or SCX10 style rig. 27-turn is a nice mix of a little bit of speed, but also good crawlability. 35-turn, if you just want a nice, slow, steady crawler with really great low end, nice torque, and just something that you never really want to get into a hurry with. Anything above that, 45-turn, 55-turn, I think we're past those days when we really need that type of motor. I think the 35-turn motors that we can get now have been great motors. Holmes has those with the Torque Master series. There's the Sport, the Expert, and the Pro. So a Pro is a hand wound all the way down to just straight off machine wound. I will put options for a number of these brushed and brushless setups in the description below. You guys can go through and find some different options. Now, as far as radios go, radios are a whole nother world with a ton of different options. Again, I'm using my Futaba 4PX radio. This is the most overkill radio you could ever use on a trail rig like this. Its little brother, the Futaba 4PLS, has been my go-to radio for quite a while. While I like my 4PX, there is a part of me that is a little bit concerned about bashing this thing while I'm on the rocks, where my 4PL is a radio that's less than half the cost. If something were to happen to it, I could get over it. I could replace it for much less than this 4PX would cost me to replace. The 4PLS also has all the options that I really ever need for a trail truck built into it. It's got 95% of the functions that this 4PX has that I would use in a trail truck. Personally, Futaba Radios are what I'm always going to recommend. I've been with Futaba for a long time, and I really trust their radios. Also, their receiver cost. If you're running a 4PLS, a 4PX, either one, you can get receivers that are 6-channel, however you can only use 4, but nice to have those extra slots for accessories for $30. It's hard to beat that. There's a ton of options. You can get them cheap. They run well. Range is good. Tons of programming in the radios themselves for custom mixing. four-wheel steer mixing, if that's something that you're into, just custom 3-position switches, 5-position switches, 10-position switches, whatever you're looking for or you need as far as that goes, those radios can do it. $200 for a radio. If you're in the hobby market for the long haul, you want a radio that's going to take care of you, I think that it's a good choice and the way to go. If a ready-to-run radio, a 2-channel type radio is all you need, I understand. You can pick up a lot of different options as far as that goes, but having the options that some of those better radios provide is something that I really see a value in, and you may too once you're further into the hobby. On the subject of cleaning up your wiring, Axial includes with the kit on the parts tree several of these little pieces that help you tidy up and route your wires, keep them in place exactly where you want them. And I've taken the chance to use several of them while I did this. Now, I used 2 of them up front to help keep my servo wire exactly where I want it. When you've got the tires rotating up there, coming up very close to the chassis, it's just nice to make sure that you know that that thing's not going to get grabbed or fall down or anything like that. So I chose to use 2 of them up front and use 2 more of these little wire retainers to hold that sensor wire right where I wanted it. Now, I think there's one other very important topic to cover while talking about choosing electronics for this truck, and that is the available 2-speed for the SCX10-II. This same topic carries over to the Yeti and the Bomber, in my opinion, though. Now, myself, I do not like 2-speed transmissions. I don't recommend them. I just don't care for them. Here is why, though. With the available options that we have today as far as motors and ESCs go, I can get all of the speed that this car can handle and the low speed crawlability out of a single censored 4-pole brushless motor like I've got in here. Now, this motor is more expensive. I understand that. But if you try and run a 2-speed setup, you're going to spend a considerable amount of money to buy the 2-speed, also to buy the servo that you need to shift the 2-speed, and you also have to have a 3-channel radio. If you have a 3-channel radio, great. You can write that part out of the equation. So if you were to take the money that you spent on the 2-speed setup and the servo and the radio, if you didn't already have an option, and you were to just roll that amount of money into buying a nicer brushless motor and ESC, you'd probably come out close to even. And you would get rid of one more area for mechanical failure or failure of the electronics in the servo, endpoint issues, a number of different issues that all come up when you add the complexity of a 2-speed system to a car like this. That is why I don't think that 2 speeds are the way to go. Now, if you just want the fun part of banging gears in your RC car, that's something else. I get it. Go for it. Have a blast. I understand that part of wanting a 2-speed. All right, guys, that's going to conclude my opinions on the electronic setup for an SCX10-II. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next episode when we start to get into a few other upgrades to change the styling a little bit more on this SCX10-II. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.